Welcome, everybody, to the Art of a Peaceful Mind. I'm Kim Root, and today we have with us Dr. Catherine Kelly. She is a clinical psychologist, and she's been very prolific on radio and TV talking about the soul. She is an author actually a very prolific author too. So let's introduce her. Hi, how are you today, Catherine?
I'm great. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, me too. So I'm so interested in the way you talk about the soul, or taking care of your soul, taking care of yourself from the perspective of the soul. So to you, can you just share about what you mean by soul health?
Absolutely. A lot of people ask what my definition of soul itself is, because I think a lot of people kind of bristle thinking it's a religious term.
Yeah.
But really, to me, and I kind of lay this out in the book, is that the soul is the essence of who we are. So that essence transcends, to me, any religion, any belief system, anything, because if there's really 7.5 billion people on this planet, well, then we have 7.5 billion essences of who we are. So I try to keep it very basic to kind of transcend the religious piece. But soul health, to me, as a psychologist, I've been doing some sort of mental health work since I was 18 years old. And I've watched a lot of people struggle, a lot of people wrestle, but really what I've found is that it's the deepest part of them that seems to heal when you do kind of more of a, again, I call it a soul-based work. But when you really go down to that essence of who a person is and talk to them about what is, and I use the word misaligned, really talk to them about what's misaligned and what is not fitting that essence of who they are, they get to the nitty-gritty of what needs to be healed. So to me, soul health is helping a person get down to that essence of who they are and helping them create a blueprint for how to realign their lives for what I call radiant living. So it's really a process. It's just like health itself. We never reach full health. It's a process, and soul health is the same thing, because to me, as long as we are alive, we are getting to know ourselves.
Okay, so what the soul, then how does somebody know if they're, you talk about well, you talk about taking care of the soul, or taking care of your soul from the taking care of yourself from the soul's perspective. Is that right? Does that?
Yeah, I think the essence of who we are really is reflected in what I call that gut reaction. Sort of our gut reactions. We can all relate to times when we had a gut reaction, but we didn't follow it. And then our lives kind of blew up or got misaligned. And then we kind of had to regroup and start over. And whether it was a relationship that we knew we shouldn't be in, or a job we shouldn't take, or health behavior that we shouldn't be engaging in, but we did it anyway. Well, to me, it's that whole idea of, again, learning who you are at that deep level and understanding that our process of what I call our soul's evolution is a part of learning how to realign that part of us. Now, again, most of us don't listen to our guts because we're taught to listen to our heads. And so listening to our heads and our hearts, I think, can lead us wrong, can lead us astray. But all of us know that when we follow our gut reactions, we get where we're supposed to be. There's no regret, there's peace, talking about peacefulness. There's a lot of peace when we follow our gut because we know that it's all going to line up. So to me, soul health is helping teach a person how to really look at all the different aspects of their life, and slowly and surely and also systematically start aligning their lives so that they can get into that flow of what really makes them feel better and more confident and more radiant. So it's kind of a complex subject because people don't talk about health in this way.
Right. So do you find that, why is it something that we need to talk about? Like people, you say it brings peace, right? But so why do we have fear about that? Do you agree that there's fear or some hesitation about following that inner gut feeling?
Absolutely. Yes, I do. And I think, again, I've worked with thousands of different people. And I think for me, the fear comes from, I think most people are terrified to get to know themselves, because that would mean that they actually do have to hold themselves accountable, or they do have to look at their lives in terms of, wow, am I really doing what I'm supposed to be doing in terms of life purpose or life passion? Or, I often tell people, I use a lot of metaphors in the work I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I often tell people that, the toughest thing we ever have to do is look at ourselves metaphorically in the mirror, because we can go through tragic events, we can go through tremendous grief or tragedy or whatever it is, and those are very difficult things. But I really think that the toughest thing we ever have to do is turn that mirror on ourselves and say, okay, am I ready to take a look? So when you think about people that are afraid to listen to their gut, it's probably because they know their truth is going to change their lives.
Right.
And it's a scary thing to live in your truth, especially in a society that is so based on judgment and separation. And I think the thing is, living in a way that aligns yourself, it can be really scary until you realize that is, to me, where peace and radiance comes from. So, some people want to talk about authenticity. Some people want to talk about genuineness. I talk about the soul because that's the deepest part of who we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what would you say to help somebody take that step if they're, because we really, it's what we want, but at the same time, there's this fear to step into it because, like you say, it's going to change our lives, right? So how does somebody, is it just a leap of faith, or how does somebody make that step? Or even sometimes it's hard to tell in the beginning, is this really my deepest inner feeling? Is this the right way? Or,
Right.
what?
Kim, I think it's a great question because, how do you get started? In our society, we are taught to listen to a very intellectual part of us. So we're supposed to problem solve, intelligence and motivation and the way that we think through life is what is rewarded in our society. And so we're not really reinforced or rewarded to listen to our gut. So, that it is I guess you could call it a leap of faith to start listening to your gut. But I also think that most people want really to live their truth. Again, another thing I tell people is that, I think as human beings, our biggest job is to find our truth and keep it. And the keeping it part is probably even harder than finding it, because we do have so many challenges. So breaking through that fear is a big thing. And yet, one of the things I tell people or talk to people about is that whole idea of, regret, that most of us don't want to live with regret. So one of the best ways to ask yourself how to use that gut reaction is, what would I regret more, this or this?
Mm-hmm.
And most people have that pit in their stomach arise when it's something that they would regret. And to me, that is your soul's way of saying, don't go down that path. So, it is a scary process, but frankly, when I work with clients, I talk to them a lot about that concept of conscious evolution. And so we get to choose our realities, and we can either choose to live in fear, or we can work our way to a point where we're living in that truth of our soul. And then we're not creating a reality that's uncomfortable. We're actually creating a very vibrant and rich life.
Right. So we evolve anyway, right? So I love that you say that it's conscious, because we can do it unconsciously or we can do it consciously. And to be able to I think you were talking about it in one of your videos that I watched, about what you were just saying about taking a look and seeing which choice is the one that I'm going to feel good about later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We often, most of us don't want to go out and exercise because we think of the discomfort in exercising rather than the outcome.
Right.
And I think if we can get people looking beyond the work it takes for us to be healthy, excuse me, then the outcome is really what we have our eyes on. And to me, that's the same thing with our conscious evolution, that, excuse me, we can go through so many tough things, but if we can look at how we're going to grow and where we're going to get to on the other side, that makes all of our challenges worth it. So that art of peace kind of thing is about understanding that when we get on the other side of it, that is kind of not only our evolution, but that's our radiance. That's what we're striving for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So sometimes that's one easy way to look at it, because sometimes we think, well, what I really want is to sit here on the couch and not do anything.
Oh yeah.
But if we have a chance to look at the future just a little bit, or farther out in the future, what do I want? It's different than what your body wants right now, which is to sit on the couch and watch TV, right?
Yeah.
So it's simple to be able to tell.
And I was kind of obsessed with evolution when I was a kid, so it doesn't surprise me that I talk about, conscious evolution now.
Right.
But scientists pretty much say that as far as we know, we are the only species on the planet who can consciously decide to do something to feel better. So in other words, most animals, when they evolve, they do it trial and error. They do it fight or flight. They do it kind of along the way. They don't really sit there going, what are going to change my life? Mm-hmm. But unique to humans, we have that skill. And for some people, they don't want to take the time or effort to evolve, even though, like you said, there's a push for us to evolve. It's our soul's most natural state. And so, yeah, I might argue that we don't always grow if we're not really thinking about it, but we definitely grow more and faster and in a much more rich way if we are putting that consciousness to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we can do it for ourselves, and we can also on a bigger, I don't know if you talk about it this way, but I think about it sometimes that we can do it on a bigger scale, of course, collectively too, when we make a goal together, right?
Absolutely.
That's a really big thing we need to think about more, I think. You said also something that caught me about, we are not here to find our purpose. We are here to find our truth, or to hear our truth.
Right.
Talk about that difference a little bit.
Yeah, that's a risky statement, and I understand that, because there are so many authors out there and so many speakers that, really want you to find your purpose. And I understand why people, want to find their purpose. But I think because of how we are programmed and because of how our society runs, there's so many expectations out there that a lot of times most people don't live their own truth. They live what they think other people or the society or the family or their coworkers or whomever. A lot of times they live outside of themselves. And so there's still that misalignment. And, I can't tell you how many corporate execs that have come to me and have, very successful in their corporations, and yet they're miserable because they're not doing what fits them. They're kind of doing what has swept them away. And professionals from any career path, have come in saying the same thing. So I really feel like, again, I use the word alignment, but I really feel like the most important thing anybody can do is work on finding their truth, because their purpose is going to come right along with it anyway. Mm. But, I can't tell you how many people think they found their purpose, but then they find themselves so incredibly misaligned or in one or more ways. So, yeah, I know that's a very different way to look at life, but that soul alignment to me is the only way that we really truly evolve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, for me, I've talked to my students or found for myself that, okay, when I find my purpose, then there's a motivation, but also then at times found myself, wait a minute, I don't feel like what you're saying. I don't feel aligned with me anymore. What happened?
Exactly. Yeah. And if you really think about anybody's life and how the lifespan works, I think I know the new reports of our lifespan just came out, and they said for the first time, life expectancy has come down. And I think those first time in 30 or 40 years that it's come down. And I think it's still like 80 for women and maybe 75 for men. If you really think about that, think about how many different purposes a person lives throughout that time frame. So I guess it's a semantics thing, but if you think about the truth that we find as we grow and age and evolve, really, there's one truth, one self-truth, and a sense of self, but there could be multiple purposes. So again, it's probably a semantics thing, but I just think it's really a tricky thing because, and this is my other joke, is that, if finding your purpose was really what we're supposed to do, then one book should have helped us get there, not the thousands that are out there.
Right.
So it's one of those things where it really is about that alignment piece as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think, maybe that's part of the purpose too. Maybe the semantic thing, it's a game to keep trying to align the purpose or the truth.
Absolutely.
You have you've been really prolific author lately too. So you have a book that came out, I think, this year, and another one that's coming out soon, and another one that's in the works. That there's one called what is it, about radiance?
Soul health aligning with spirit for optimal radiance. And so that's the one that came out in May of this year, and that's actually a revised edition of the one I put out in 2013. And really, that book is about what I call my soul health model. And there's a tree. I keep doing this because there's a model of a tree in that book, and there's 10 core branches of really the human condition. And these are the 10 core branches that I've identified that I have heard for years doing therapy. And all of the wellness models that are out there really only have about 6 components, but then I kept hearing things that were missing from their models. And so I created my own model, and the 10 branches to me do represent pretty much all of the things that any human being on this planet is working on to align their lives. And then the soul part of it to me is the core, which is the trunk and the root system. And really that's how we learn to be more resilient, is that the more sturdy we become, the more balanced we become, the more we anchor ourselves. So the soul health model is really what is described in Soul Health Aligning with Spirit for Radiant Living. And I love this book. It's one of those things where I've used this model I created the model about 15 years ago, or started creating the model about 15 years ago. And I use it for so many different things, and people can just glance at it and understand almost immediately what they need to work on for that particular day or week or month. And so it does provide a blueprint, which is really, really nice.
So a blueprint for your life being radiant, is that?
I call it radiant living. I do use the words alignment quite a bit. I use the word soul evolution. So the radiant living to me means that process of aligning your life so that you meet that truth within you. So you meet that essence of who you are, and you help develop that essence of who you are. So that's really what this book is about. And the book that's coming out in February, I'm really excited about this one too, because it's a little bit of an offshoot of this book, but it's kind of a long story how it evolved. But, and like I said, I've been doing this kind of work since I was 18 years old in one way or another, and have realized that people are pretty terrible at taking care of themselves. They don't really know how to create a plan. If you ask someone, what do you do to take care of themselves? A lot of times they're stymied. They don't really know, which is strange given that, our public is so health conscious. So I literally use the concept of creating a recipe for your life. The book is called Recipe for Radiance, The Art and Soul of, we just changed the title. So Mastering the Art and Soul of Self-Care. And this book is about really teaching people from the metaphor of creating a recipe food recipe to create their own recipe for wellness and self like love of self, self-help, self-care. I call it soul care. And so it's been a really fun book for me to write because I love cooking. So I got to weave in a lot of cooking metaphors and how a chef creates their meals. And so I'm excited about this one coming out in February. It's a lot of fun.
So do you have some examples of how people can do that or where they can start?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share, because really, the basic formula for any recipe is to find your staples, so your meat and potatoes, so what it is that is the substance of the recipe, and in this case, it would be substance of self-care. So what are the things that are kind of no-brainers, that these are things that you have come to understand that if you do these things, they are going to help you feel more radiant and help you feel more enriched and feel restored in the case that you've had some tough events. The second part of that is the broth. In other words, what are the fluid kinds of things that you can really pay attention to and integrate into your life? So the fluid parts to me are things that you might not need to do on a regular basis, but they need to be part of your life, so that it kind of, soup is not soup unless you have the broth as something that holds it together. So, and I'll give you some examples of this in a few minutes, but so you've got the broth, and then you've got the spices, meaning that you've got the flavorings, you've got the things that are very unique to yourself that maybe no one else sees as nourishing or flavoring to their lives, but that for you, it is this, your life wouldn't be the same without it. So, for me, and I learned way back in graduate school that there were 5 core things that really helped me kind of either get out of the funk or keep me healthy. One is exercise. One is getting decent sleep. One is doing something spiritual or grounding on a regular basis. Another one is reading something that has nothing to do with school or work. And then the last one at the time was nature, that I really, I get infused by nature. That's something that I really need. And those are just examples of what my meat and potatoes or staples are, that if I'm feeling like I'm drained, I literally think through which one of those I need. And sometimes you can double up on those. So I can go for a walk in nature and basically be spiritual. So sometimes you can kind of play with that. And then for me, the fluid parts are, I actually like having background music that has no words. So I like music that has words, but really I like the soft music that is just sort of melodic, and that's my broth. That's one of the forms of my broth. And then the spices might be, or an example of the spice for me might be something like, I tend to like musicals or plays that have a little bit of a quirky twist. And so sprinkling in an occasional, Broadway show or going to a movie that's a little bit different and off the beaten path, to me, that's a spice, because not everybody likes those kinds of things, but they really feed my soul. Mm-hmm. So this book is really kind of, a fun metaphor to teach people how to create their own personalized recipe for radiance.
That sounds great, because it's fun, and it's useful, because at least in my life, I'm so busy all the time that suddenly when I have some time, I might just do something I like, rather than having it, like building it out so that something that's gonna really be fulfilling and have all those parts of the recipe in. So I love the idea of it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it makes sense to people once they really understand the different pieces and parts. It's like, they create that recipe and they got it for the rest of their lives. It's just like I said, I've known those 5 since graduate school 20 some years ago, and I still fall back on those because I know that those will help. So it's just teaching people that soul health and self-care take a little effort and time, but once you figure it out, you got it.
So you said you've been doing things like this kind of thing since you were 18. What motivated you to get into this kind of work and want to help people, or want to help yourself?
It was interesting because I was one of those very fortunate people that I was a junior in high school, and I was taking, we take classes to figure out what we want to do when we grow up. And I had taken an honors psychology class my junior year in high school. And within about the first week or two, I was like, okay, I think this is it. And it was interesting how that happened for me because, I didn't go into it thinking that's what I was going to like, but I loved the idea of kind of understanding people at a deep level. And people historically, friends, family, they would come talk to me and tell me their tough stuff anyway. And so I think it just started happening. Now, granted, I went through a lot of different ideas of what I was going to do with psychology before I landed on what I'm doing now, because I look at that as part of my own evolution. But really from an early age, from 18, I started volunteering and doing things. First one was I volunteered with the police department doing some work with their domestic violence council. So
Wow.
I learned a lot, did some ride-alongs, which was a little bit scary at times. But I started very early, and then again, it kind of wove its way in to my life to be doing what I'm doing now.
So then what, do you remember what guided you to do what you do now? The more specifically soul-centered stuff and self-care?
Yeah, Kim, that's a great question. And what's interesting is it's kind of strange to admit this, but it wasn't until I was doing an interview about the book a few years ago that it really hit me for how all of this came together, because way back when I was 9 years old, my father had an accident that left him medically disabled. And it was interesting to watch because as a 9-year-old, I was pretty watchful and observant even then, but I was still a 9-year-old and I didn't at the time really understand what was going on. But you fast forward and you see how a person's world sort of falls apart or gets dismantled as a result of an accident like that. And then, of course, being observant, I saw how it affected my mother. I saw how it affected my siblings. So when I got to, junior in high school, I thought, oh, psychology. Okay, so maybe this will help me understand how all those pieces and parts, came together. But then I fast forward to graduate school, which was very interesting because at the same time that I started my counseling psychology master's program, I also started working for the student health promotion department of that same university. So in my job, I was learning about wellness, and in my schooling, I was learning about sickness. Mm-hmm. And it was very strange because I'm thinking, wait a minute, well, I'm here to help these people become well, but we're not being taught wellness, we're being taught sickness. So it was sort of one of those synchronistic events that, I was learning wellness at the same time. And so I started melding those together in a way that I immediately started creating my own approach to how I would do the intakes and ask questions and kind of look at a person's whole life. And fast forward, I worked for a medical school and again saw a lot more of how people's lives were falling apart. Left that job, went into private practice, and then had a holistic health center. And that's really where I started seeing all of this come together and realizing that, not only are there those 10 branches of the human condition, but when I looked back and saw what happened with my dad, there was really no physical or psychological reason why he couldn't have gotten back to where he was. The physicians were like, there's no reason. But something else broke deeply within him. There was something that broke because he was capable from a human level, but there was something very deep that was broken and that kept him from, really exercising what he needed to in order to get back. So that's when I started realizing that we need to take health to a deeper level in order to really be effective. And that's where all of this has unfolded for me.
So are you talking about the difference between like in the studies you were looking at, like we're so used to being asked what's wrong rather than what's right or how are we going to make things right?
Yeah.
To be right or how to be happy.
Yeah. And I think, yes, that's a very good way to put it is instead of looking at what's wrong and what got broken, a lot of times I try to help redirect clients and workshop participants to, yes, we know all of that, but what is it that you need to do to rebuild your life? What is it that needs to be realigned not just patched, but what do we need to evolve beyond in order to get you not only back to where you were, but move even beyond that point?
Mm. So, so did your dad then stay disabled? Is he any better, or?
No, he passed away when I was 21 years old, and it was one of those things where it took me a long while to understand it, because again, there was no physical reason why he couldn't have done what he needed to. But that he died when I was 21. It probably, I would say, it was probably 31 or 32, maybe 33, when I started to put enough of it together to go, wait a minute, there was something more deeply broken in him. And so I think, again, I look at this as, in some ways, his experiences and our experience within that family gave me the gift of understanding soul health. And
Right.
so to me, that's partly why I'm so dedicated and excited about bringing this message to the world, is to help people kind of get a whole different angle on how to get well and how to get themselves into a better place.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of times those tragic times can also be gifts, but it's difficult. Difficult.
Yeah, it was difficult, but now I feel like I understand it all a lot more.
Right. Right. So I would like to have you take a few minutes to share about your free gift that you have for everybody.
Yeah, so actually, one of them is that if you would like to go to my website and sign up for my newsletter, you will get a free meditation that we put together. And that meditation is basically, again, about how to get yourself centered and grounded in order to lead a more optimal and radiant life. And I had a friend who helped me with this, and we had a great deal of fun doing it too. But that is the gift that I'd like to offer to you today. And also on the website, which is www.drkatherineTkelly.com, you can also just type in soul health and it will get to me. Same web page. But the other thing is there's lots of information on the website to download. So you've got PDFs and you've got lots of information. There's actually a lot more information that will be coming soon too, but there's lots of videos on that website that are on YouTube. But to me, they're all free to people, and I'd love people to just absorb what they can.
All right, that's generous and beautiful. I think we do have a link for your free gift on here. We should anyway, so people can make it easy and just click on it, and then going to your website too. So
Great.
Is there anything else in the last few minutes we have that you would like to share that we didn't go over?
The only other thing, and like you, I'm a very busy person, and my creative brain kind of gets the best of me sometimes. But coming in January, I actually have a line of essential oils that are coming out that are all about creating peace and groundedness in a person. And I've done the research myself. I've blended these myself. In fact, I get to go pick them up for the first time this coming Saturday. And my mission is to offer as many tools as possible to help people really align and get themselves to that place of radiant living. So I've got webinars, I've got classes, I've got a lot of new stuff coming out this next year, which again, I'm excited about. But I also have probably in 2020, I know that's a year away, but I'm launching a soul health practitioners certification. So if there are practitioners out there that really want to learn how to integrate soul health and the concept of soul health into their work, that practitioner certification will be coming out in January of 2020. So lots of fun stuff happening, and I would love to have you join me.
Sounds great. And all of that is on your website, I guess.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, super. Thank you so much for being here with us, and I really enjoyed it. And thank you for everybody for being here, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye.